Welcome back to Fuel Up Classic. Now I thought for the last video of this year, let's go out in style. And they don't come much more stylish than the BMW 635 CSI. As with all my videos, I'm going to take this car out for a drive on some of my favourite country roads, and I'll just talk you through what it's like to be behind the wheel, and also why this car now is so highly regarded. Prices have risen dramatically, but as usual with all my videos, I try and bring a little bit of balance in it. If you're looking to part with your cash for a 635 CSI, I'll point out once we get back home from a drive what to look out for, and crucially what to pay as well. And for the last video of 2023, it brings me neatly on just to say, if you haven't subscribed already, please do. It makes a huge difference. I cannot believe we've not been going very long on this channel, and I think we've covered a huge variety of classics. There's plenty more on the way, by the way, next year, lots more to come from the channel. And we're rapidly approaching 10,000 subscribers. Feels like an incredible number. I can only thank each and every one of you for subscribing, liking and commenting on my other classic car videos. But this one, it's all about the BMW 635. Let's take it out for a drive and see what the fuss is all about. Well, we've had no such luck with the weather holding out. It's just started to pour with rain, but I'm not going to let that stop us. In fact, I'm quite looking forward to seeing how this car handles on a slippery, wet road. Because that is the key thing with a 635 CSIs. Even today, not only do I think this car looks great for its age, but it drives really, really well. There's nothing quite like them, to be honest, and I know that it's very cliche to use the term ultimate driving machine, because that was BMW's slogan back in the day, but there is a lot of truth in it. When you compare this car to an XJS of the era, and I'm a massive Jaguar fan, but this car is leagues ahead in terms of how it drives, how it gets down the road, and just the confidence-inspiring nature of it. Steering is really nicely weighted, wheel feels great in your hands, those big tyres offer plenty of grip, and you can push this car. I mean, we're bumbling along now at 55 miles an hour. I've got a couple of great little twisty turns coming up, and like this, just feed it into the corner and there's no drama. There's no drama at all. It just keeps flat, composed, and if you can't tell, I'm having quite a bit of fun with this. The brakes, well, they'll scrub the speed off nice and quickly as well. They're not perfect, but for the era, they're very good. So we've just got into a national speed limit zone, and I'll just pop the gearbox into sport mode and squeeze the throttle a little bit. There's a couple of great twisty turns coming up, and I hope you can pick this up. Lovely 6-cylinder roar in the cabin. But look at this, you can just carry the speed through the corners. We're at 60 miles an hour and it just holds on beautifully. Doesn't feel a handful, just feels really composed. There we go, like the road upsets it slightly there, but through that left hand, through that, fantastic. This is leagues above even some modern cars. I'm seriously impressed by this, and performance wise it can still kick up its heels and go. And in terms of refinement, I mean, this is a fairly rough road, and I like to test cars on this because you get to see where the car doesn't excel. And yes, the ride is firmer than any Mercedes or Jaguar of the era, undoubtedly, but it's never uncomfortably firm, and especially if you're stepping out of a modern BMW, this will feel like a big, comfy armchair in comparison. It's the right side of supple, yet still sporting, and really only the roughest of surfaces upsets it. And let's just talk about the cabin in here, because it's extremely Germanic, as you would expect from a BMW, but these cars from the late 70s and 80s, and it's worth noting that the E24 which is the official code name given to the 6 Series, had a really long production run. It was about 1976 to 1989. And I think they built over 82,000 examples of these. They were a common sight at one point, but not so much anymore. These are rare cars now, and you get lots of smiles and waves as you're driving along because people remember these. They've always been a cool car. Don't think they ever went through that absolute lull of just being an old banger. They've always been pretty highly regarded, and no more so than these last few years where prices have risen very, very steeply. But what do you get for your money? And I think it is a very attractive package now in 2023 as we enter 2024 of why you might want to consider one of these, because as I've mentioned, it looks great. That shark nose front, those pillarless doors, it's just an iconic car. It looks truly unique and it looks truly BMW, to be honest. You can't confuse it with any other manufacturer. And I like that. I like that this car has got its own core identity. The interior is a lovely place to be. I've got these lovely, soft, supple leather bucket seats, hold you in all the right places. Lovely, clear, driver-focused dashboard, tilted towards the driver. Everything I need to see is in direct vision. There's no silly buttons everywhere and no touch screens, obviously. This is well before the era of all that coming in. And I just think it offers a wonderful blend of old school motoring, but it's modern enough that you can really enjoy it. It's not an old bone shaker. It doesn't feel like it's from centuries ago. It just feels much more modern than it actually is. And this car can still give a new car a run for its money. It's a really joyous place to be. And let's not forget, it's practical too. Adults can fit in the back. You probably wouldn't want to take them on long journeys, but if you've got a couple of children, they'll comfortably be in the back here. A big boot as well for plenty of luggage. And this car, as it did back in the 80s, is still very capable these days. Long distance, high speed touring, top speed 143 miles an hour. And I've got no doubt that if we were on the Nürburgring today, that this car would comfortably top that and sit there all day long in absolute comfort. The only thing that you notice where it shows its age is in terms of a little bit of wind noise creeping into the cabin as you get up to 60, 70 miles an hour. That's probably part of the design. It could just be that these seals are slightly perished, and let's not forget pillarless doors. They're really hard to seal at the best of times. Anyone that owns an old Jag will know that. So still really refined. There's not that many shortcomings that I can think of. And for me, a 635 CSI is from an era where BMW just got it right. They got them looking right, driving right, and they had the image to go with it as well. And this is still a cool car. It's a great buy for somebody, whether you just bring it out at weekends and enjoy it as a toy, or whether you, if you really wanted to, you could daily drive one of these. And what a cool daily driver this would be. It's worth pointing out, if you are in the market for an E24 BMW, that the 635 is far more likely to be the car that you go for. There's more of them for sale, but there are others in the lineup that you should be aware of at the very least. But I think the 635 is the sweet spot, and it's where you put your sensible money these days. But things started off with a 628. That's the entry-level model. Then you had the 633 CSI, and then a couple of years later, along came the 635. Now, of course, there's also the M635. Now, that's a very different beast. It's actually one of my lottery win all-time cars. Well, in actual fact, I love the Alpina version of the E24, but you're talking big, big money for one of those. But the M635, a different beast altogether. Love to get one on the channel in the future to show you. That's a real 155 plus mile an hour supercar, 286 brake horsepower. Might not sound a lot these days, but back in the day it could shift. This car is the 635 CSI, as I've pointed out many times, mated to a 4-speed gearbox. selectable sport and economy options, and it does make a difference. It will hold the gears nicely, lock up that torque converter when you want to have a bit of fun. About 218 brake horsepower, and it's called the M30 six-cylinder engine, in case you want to do some research on that engine itself. It's pretty legendary, and it's a very hardy unit, but you've got to keep on top of maintenance, of course. But what I can tell you is this car has done 112,000 miles, very sensible mileage for the age of the car. It's been really well looked after, and that engine is as sweet as a nut. It's silky smooth, it's got plenty of punch. It's just a very, very pleasant place to be. But let's take the car back to the house now. So let's look at the next part of the video. If you weren't convinced enough already to part with your cash for a 635, well, this is the part where I try and bring in a little bit of a reality check. I do think they're an amazing buy, and like any classic car, getting a good one is key, and I really want to make sure that people do buy great examples and enjoy them, because a bad one of these can just be an endless money pit. Try and seek out a great example just like this. As usual, I always try and find the very best to feature on the channel. It helps me show you what you should look out for and what's a good one and what's a bad one. But let's kick things off. I've just done a very brief list and I will run through them. Please do your own checks if you're thinking about buying one, and I can't recommend highly enough getting a car independently inspected by a BMW specialist. Could save you absolutely thousands in the long run. That is the most solid advice. If you take anything away from any of my videos, do that before purchasing any classic car. But knowledge is never a bad thing. So when you go and view one, you'll soon be able to tell, and the chances are you'll look at 2 or 3 examples at least. You'll be able to tell a good one from a bad one. Let's kick things off. It's all around the front here at the start. This infamous shark nose raked front like this, great piece of design, but of course it's very susceptible to stone chips, dings, that kind of thing. It's really quite exposed here, and this angled front can suffer knocks and things like that quite easily. So just inspect all the way along the edges here for stone chips, signs of dodgy repairs. It's not unusual that a lot of these cars would have had some paint by now. They're getting on a bit, but you want to make sure that this is all tip top. And the bumper as well, where it curves round like that, it's a really vulnerable spot for parking and people bumping into them and cracking the bumpers. And do not underestimate with one of these, they're now quite a rare car, how expensive individual trim pieces can be. If you need to replace the chrome here, or you know, the kidney grills are no longer available, you'd have to find really good second-hand examples, and they're pricey. So start at the front. You'll start to see whether the car has been properly looked after and loved, or if the car's going to need some attention in that area going forward. It's also a great time when you stand here to start looking at the front wings. They're a really common rot point on one of these cars, and I say it in all my videos, but rust is your biggest enemy with any classic car. That's the expensive bit in the restorations, so try and avoid it if you can. Now, a new front wing for an E24 6 Series, currently about £800 each. That's before you've fitted it, and that's before you've painted it. And the chances are, if one's gone, the other one's not far behind. And probably when you remove it, you'll find that the inner wings are on their way as well. That's when you start to see restoration costs mount up and up and up. So inspect all of this. Make sure, chances are it might have had a pair of wings during its life already. Make sure the colour match is right, the panel gaps are right, and of course, get all up in the arches. If you can get the car in the air, please do. And just inspect for any signs of repairs. Make sure you're happy that there's no corrosion lurking behind there anywhere. This bit, front windscreen onwards, is where you want to focus most of your attention on a 635. But that doesn't mean they can't rot anywhere else, because they really can spectacularly. But start here, work your way back. Round the windscreens as well, water can sit in these seals and they'll start to rot out. Front and rear screens, inspect all the way around. Great time as well to look at the chrome trim, really hard to get if you need to replace it. And also whether the windscreen steel is still in good condition and it's holding the water out, because then you start to get water ingress, you'll get condensation, and of course corrosion will not be far behind. Another thing to point out, and I haven't even checked my list yet, but we'll get to it. These wheels, it's not uncommon to find a 6 Series that's sitting on non-original wheels. Most of them get borrowed from other BMWs of the era. They might have come from a later 8 Series, they might have come from an Alpina, or they could just be aftermarket set. And that's for one good reason. The tyres on these old TRX wheels are very expensive. And when I say expensive, say £500 a corner. So that's £2,000 if you need to replace a set of tyres on one of these. Bear that in mind. They look great. I think the original wheels suit this car perfectly. But bear in mind, £2,000 for a set of tyres is Ferrari and Lamborghini territory. But you've got to be aware of that with an E24. And as you follow the car down, of course, you're looking for paintwork issues, signs of filler, accident damage, all the usual things. But rot along the bottom of the doors, they can go. This car is exceptional, so I'm not going to point out any spots because there isn't any, but you might not be as lucky. And then as you go round, obviously sills underneath, jacking points, prime rust corrosion point on any old car, check those. And as you go from the rear sills down here up into the wheel arches, same again as the front. Just make sure it's all solid, get in there. If it doesn't feel right, walk away. And best tip I can ever give you, I do it with every old car I buy, take a little pocket magnet with you, run it around the most common spots. If that stops sticking to the bodywork, then you've got filler behind there, and you've got to start asking reasons of why it's there, what's been cut when they've done a restoration on this. Has it been a cheap job? Because I can't emphasize enough, restorations get very pricey very quickly. And another thing, very, very briefly, sunroof on one of these, check the corners, make sure it doesn't leak as well, of course, and it all operates as it should. Great common rust point on a BMW of this era. The moisture gets in, starts to rot out, just not a nice job to repair. So inspect that. This car, again, very, very good, very solid, all watertight, no corrosion. And that pretty much brings you most things on. Everything's in the bodywork, as you can probably tell from my explanation there. Mechanically, that old 6-cylinder is a really strong unit. You just want to be inspecting all the obvious things. Service intervals about every 6,000 miles on one of these, and it's not unusual that these cars have covered big mileage. 150,000 miles, very, very easy on one of these. This particular car sitting on 112 at the moment, plenty more life in it, but it's got a great service history. Not every example out there has. So you want to be looking for regular oil changes. Check that it's been going to a specialist, someone that understands these cars. Makes all the difference, I can tell you. Cooling system must be kept in tip-top condition as well. They do not like to get hot. Then you're getting into territory of head gasket failure, big expensive jobs. So that's another thing to bear in mind. And I hope I'm not painting a dull picture here. I just want people to get a good one or go in with their eyes open. I see a lot of people get their fingers burnt by buying their first classic, and it just puts them off for life. And I don't want that to happen. I want people to enjoy their cars. And probably brings on to one other thing with this car. As I mentioned in the video, they drive really, really well. They drive well ahead of their time, actually. But it's still a heavy old car, really, and it will be heavy on suspension bushes, brakes and things like that. So you want to look that those have been refreshed with good quality components. Rubber components aren't as good as they used to be. BMW and specialists do hold genuine stock for a lot of these cars, so it's worth seeking those sorts of things out. Cheap rubber doesn't last, but bushes and all the perishable hoses and things like that, they want to be replaced quite frequently. And if you're doing a full refresh on one of these, it's a big job. It is a big, big job. And you will tell a tired example from a really good one in the drive. If it's wallowy, it's sloppy, the steering's got plenty of play in it, chances are you're in line for a proper refresh. And that pretty much brings me to it. I hope I haven't scared anybody off. It's not the object of the video whatsoever. In fact, I think these are fantastic. They are a gem of a car. And as I've mentioned frequently in this video, prices have risen considerably. Not that long ago, 10 grand got you a good one. Not anymore. double it. Double it easily, actually. £25,000 gets you into a really good 635 CSI, probably a high-line spec, later car with all the toys and the gadgets. Another thing to look out for as well. As these cars went on, they became more complicated. Make sure all the electrics work. But a car like this is a great example, and I think it's really sensibly priced at somewhere around 17 grand. That's a lot of car for the money, and as I say, when you look around, there's a lot of these that are 20, 25 plus, exceptional examples, a lot more. But you can get into an average condition one for about 12, but bear in mind, money will need to be spent on that, and you can very quickly end up spending more on a cheap one than if you'd have just bought a great example in the first place. So that sort of ends the video there. I think this is a great buy for somebody. Practical, stylish, and it drives really well as well. But that part of the video, I just wanted to point out, make sure you get a good one. If you're in any doubt, ask a specialist and they'll help you. They're there to help you keep these cars alive and for you to enjoy them the most. So there we have it. For the last video of 2023, I think we've shown a bit of a German icon here. There's plenty more to come on the channel, as I say, so I'm going to ask one more time that you do subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the new year with lots more videos, lots more projects and road trips on the way as well.